Hello, everybody. Jess Lose with SBCA, Structural Building Components Association, with a special presentation today. We are going to talk a little bit about digital QC in the program we've been working on for the last several years, take you through a demo, give you kind of the background about it, and just kind of get everybody up to speed on digital QC. We're doing this on LinkedIn, Facebook, and a couple different platforms, so it's a little bit different than my typical, I don't know if you want to call them broadcasts or updates. This will be a little bit longer. Actually, it'll be a lot longer. It'll probably be closer to 45, 50 minutes. One thing, I'm not going to have access to the comments until the end. So if you want to type in a question, I'll address those at the end. So please do. If something pops up that you want to talk about, we will do that. But let me get the screen going here. So getting to know digital QC. Make sure I can slides here. All right. The background about it, it's been a long journey. It's been 5 years, maybe even longer than that, of how long SBCA has been working on this project. It was a great idea when it came up, and it's remained a very popular effort. And now we're to the point of releasing it fully. The biggest goal with it and what we wanted to do is modernize the in-plant quality control process. For several years, even decades, it had very much been a paper process to where you would either use a tooth count method or a plate placement method with some vellum. You'd get out there in the elements and you would have a printout of where the plate should be relative to the wood members, and you'd see where the center was, and you'd mark that, and mark any defective teeth or where the lumber was defective. Very much a manual process. It worked. It sufficed until, honestly, somebody said, and I believe it was probably Jack Dermer when he was president, at a officer retreat, that said, why can't we do something a little bit better than this? And that was the idea, and it was kind of born from there, and SBCA staff took it and run from there. So the biggest thing that we need to do with any quality control program for trusses, that's roof trusses, floor trusses, is abide by TPI 1 Chapter 3. We're going to go over that here in a little bit, but I wanted to talk about the goals. And really, it's to speed up the QC inspection process. It was lengthy, it was manual, and it, in a lot of instances, took somebody a full-time job to keep up on the QC requirements. Other times, it was just somebody doing it as part of their job, but it took up way too much time through that. Also, we wanted to move away from the vellum inspections. Vellum paper is nice for what it did, but I think we might be one of the only industries still using vellum paper. It, is probably a good backup method should a tablet go down or something like that to keep in the back of your mind once you fully adopt digital QC. But it is one of those things where it's time for a little bit of a change. We also wanted to improve long-term record retention. That means, how long, and you should have this in your policy, in your QC manual, how long do you keep the data? How are you using the data? Can you compound the data to understand, okay, over the last 3 months, this is what we're looking at. Over the past 6 months, a year, these are the trends we're seeing with our QC. And that was one of the things that wasn't really available. It was available through WTCA in-plant QC, but there just wasn't a lot of adoption there. So that's one of the things that we're trying to include with this, is to where managers or even table leads or ownership of a component manufacturing facility can look back over a course of time and understand, okay, this is how our QC's progressed. We're getting better, we're getting worse, we're staying the same. Why? You can look into some of those things. So if you measure it, it will improve. That's kind of the edict with digital QC here. Also, the ultimate goal is to improve the quality of roof and floor trusses. Now, I know I've never talked to anybody that builds a bad truss. They all build the best trusses in every market, every person I talk to. Me, when I built trusses, I built the best ones, but yet I still had some quality control issues and still had some quality issues. Trusses are out there that, could be better. And that's what we're looking for, is to build better trusses and to have a better overall industry. The idea here is a rising tide will hopefully raise all ships. So as we got through, a number of things with digital QC, we had a long beta process where a lot of people were using it, giving us feedback. And some of those initial findings were an improved dialogue. And that was in a couple different areas. The QC inspectors and the table personnel, that relationship improved drastically. Instead of the QC inspector coming in and saying, hey, Jimmy, you messed up on this plate, or something's going on in this truss, and they're showing them the vellum paper or trying to, show them the teeth that they've marked. That doesn't work as well as a photograph. And that's exactly what digital QC is. It photographs the joint. If the rotation's off, if it's an embedment issue, or say it's shifted one way or another, that is easy to see when it's visual, when it's in a photograph. That way, then Jimmy, the argument really gets quiet, and it's like, oh gosh, we really did mess that up. You've got the proof right there. What can we do to make it better? And that, on the top side, is a really easy thing to do to get a plate just exactly where it was, especially with lasers and everything we got today. But on that back side is the biggest part. And that's one of the nice things about digital QC is it allows you to take a photograph of both sides. Also, the dialogue between the QC inspectors and management. Now the inspectors are one of those folks that can actually improve, the entire operation of the facility, and they can talk with management. They can have a discussion. They can show statistics, and they can show the relevancy of, what's going on in the plant and how can we, are we slipping in an area? Are we making it better in other areas? Is it just the night shift? Is it the day shift? Or is it the swing shift that's having problems? Is it only certain tables? Maybe it's a worn out piece of equipment that the finish roller isn't, embedding the plates the way it should, or what it did, maybe 2 years ago. So that's another thing that dialogue, it can, raise awareness on a lot of different things. So with that, we've got better control of the quality control processes. It allows you to increase the inspection frequency. So obviously, and we're going to get to this with what TPL1 Chapter 3 says, but it allows a lot more control by decision makers at each location, whether that's the ownership, the manager, maybe it's somebody up above, maybe it's just the table that wants, instead of doing the minimum, we can do more inspections. And that might be a best practice to say, hey, we're not at the levels we expect ourselves to be at. Let's improve the frequency of our inspections. And then at that point, quality should improve. The more you measure it, the tighter your tolerances are going to get, the more you can do that. The other thing it does, and this is the opposing view, and either way, as long as you're meeting the TPI1 Chapter 3 requirements, you can use digital QC however you see fit. It allows you to devote time to other tasks. So let's say that person that was a full-time position, maybe only 3/4 of his time, or maybe half her time too, in a lot of cases, is only for QC, and they can go off and do different things. As hard as it is to get personnel, especially in the plant, being able to share that position will only help other things in the location. So that's another thing, is the efficiency, the speed, and being able to cross-utilize personnel throughout the location there. So with that, what stays the same? And I alluded to it a few different times, and this is really kind of the, I've got, I don't know if you can see me here, but I keep this on my desk because I'm referring to it every single day. The TPI1 Chapter 3 requirements are still the same. So what that requires, and I highlighted it here, is the production flow chart, an organizational chart, the sampling criteria, and the document retention. That does not change, and that needs to be in your QC manual. Also, the weekly QC inspections. Now, this simply put is 3 trusses per setup per shift. So if you've got multiple shifts, boom, you double it. If you've got multiple setups, boom, you multiply it by however many setups you've got, and you need 3 trusses. Now, with as much as we're doing with robotics and the ability to improve quality control processes with tools like digital QC, this came up at our last OQM, and it was a brilliant discussion. Does that 3 trusses need to change? Well, there's a TPI1 project committee that works on those types of things. It'll probably be several years before that changes because of just the timing of everything. But it's a worthy discussion that, maybe we increase that, maybe we decrease that. Maybe it's different for human-built trusses versus 100% robotics. Again, that's fodder for another time. But it is one of those things that gets you thinking like, gosh, so much is changing in the component manufacturing industry right now and how trusses are built. We need to be thinking about our quality control processes throughout as well. With that, the QA program requirements, and this comes out of 3.1.3, quality assurance procedures, which is based on section R100, which I think actually got updated to R104 in the 2021 IRC. I need to verify that. I just looking at it this morning, but also section 110 of the IBC. So the reasons for having a QA program, they still remain. And if you have a QA program, you should continue it. If you don't have one, I strongly suggest you find one. SBCRI is an option. There are several options out there, but definitely look at a QA program for auditing your QC processes. With that, also, what stays the same? The concepts, the span and the height of the truss, also the material accuracy, meaning the plates, the lumber, the critical joint inspections, the average that is required. For every truss, you should have at least 1 critical joint inspection. If you have a truss that doesn't have a critical joint, well, then you have to make one up on the next truss or something like that. So also the inspection sampling, you want it to be random and relative to what it is that you're building. If all your inspections are 6-foot jack trusses and you're building 40-foot monsters, something's not right there. And that's where that QA person comes in and says, hey, you got to get this corrected. The trusses that you sample should be representative of the trusses that you're building. So that does not change. So what has changed? All right, the method of recording the information. Instead of being out there with pen and paper, marker paper, or whatever you wanted to use, now we're using a tablet. And it can be a Windows tablet, it can be an Apple tablet, or it can even be an Android tablet with what we're utilizing with Digital QC. Now, we're getting Digital QC in the Google Play Store and the Apple iTunes Store. That's final. Those final little things are getting met with Google and Apple there. So look for those here in the next couple of weeks. Also, the method of analyzing plate accuracy, that has changed, and it's going to be scary accurate once we get into it here with the demo here in a few minutes. Also, the long-term retention of the information, you're much more control, as opposed to having a file of however long looking back that you probably never refer back to of past inspections. You're going to be able to summarize that in data over time and understand, are you getting better? Are you getting worse? Is the turnover in your plant causing you problems? Those are the types of things that Digital QC specifically can, give you some insight into. Also, the quality of inspections. Now, I never did this. I'm not speaking from experience, but maybe that dot was a little closer on the plate placement method than what it should have been. I suspect maybe some of my former employees did that. I'm not going to name names or anything, but I'm guessing it happens. And its ability to fudge it a little bit, taking the actual photograph, lining it up, takes a lot of that out of it. So the human propensity to kind of fudge things, that's taken out of it. And of course, I know nobody's doing that. Everything's perfect, but I'm just saying, in case it is, Digital QC really helps out with that. Also, the use of the actual photography to illustrate the quality. Again, if it's rotated like severely, it's hard to argue with. And I see plates like that on Facebook and all kinds of different platforms all the time. And it's like, oh man, I wish that they had, Digital QC. I wish they were just building better trusses, because that's the role I'm in, is I want to promote the best built solution for roof and floor systems. Also, the reporting of QC data. And we're going to talk about that throughout. And I'm not even going to scratch the surface on what is possible with the QC data. That's kind of the level 2, level 3 as we go into some of these things, but it is really cool. So the process with determining how to use Digital QC, again, you're going to have to determine the truss. And that is one of the things to where you need to then create the QC file from the truss software. And where all the major softwares, Alpine, Mytech, Simpson, Eagle, they all provide a file. Now we're in the process of trying to converge those files from those different companies into one that very similar format. That's been a work in process. TPI, the organization, as well as the TPI members, have been very helpful with that. Those things take time. Development life cycles of each of those software platforms, the adoption. Now, component manufacturers aren't rushing out to get the latest of each of those versions of software. So there's some even years behind that we're trying to make up. So the long-term aspect of that is very bright, and we're going to be able to get it down to the single format, but it takes time, and we're working towards that. Next, once you've got that file, you need to get it to the tablet. However you do that, that's your internal network or drives or however you want to do that. Then you conduct the Digital QC inspection, and then you record the manufacturing hours in the Digital QC website on the back end. So with that, let's get into the demo here. And we're going to be using test accounts. Nothing is in a live environment at this point, so don't worry about A1 or Bob, whatever we come up with this inspection. I'm going to maximize this screen to help you guys view it a little bit better. I'm sure a lot of you are on mobile devices. But again, kind of taking you around the horn here, we've got an email, a password. Remember the password, obviously, normal things. Need help, contact us at qc@sbcacomponents.com, or the phone number gives you the build. So if you need help, we're right out in front for, if it's troubles logging in or whatever it is. We also have some settings over here in the lower right we'll get to, as well as we'll talk about that green dot here. So let's log in, and it connects to our server to make sure that you are authorized to use it. We're doing that on a location by location basis, and gives you our home screen. Now, let's say you're part of a multinational conglomerate and you've got more than one location. You could go up here, you could select your second location, wherever you're at. So the same inspector with the same login could inspect trusses at multiple locations. Here, we've just got the one listed. Tells you who it's licensed to. We've got our build date down here in the lower left, which is helpful whenever you're talking to us and to understand if you're on the most recent version. This dot in the lower right, I talked about that just a second ago. If it's green, it means you've got internet connectivity and you can connect to the server. You're not required to have that. As long as you've got the file loaded locally, you can use it offline, and that'll show red. So if you don't have Wi-Fi or internet connectivity throughout your location, That's not a big deal. You just need to load the file onto the tablet wherever you do have internet connectivity, or you can use a zip drive or thumb drive, whatever they call them now. Go out to the plant where there isn't, do everything, come back in, and then upload it from there. See, I've got an inspection queued from earlier. I can clear that right there because I was just messing around. Then in the upper right, we've got log out. We've got take you to the SBCA Digital QC webpage. We've got some settings. We can upload the inspection if I wanted to do that, do that. Also, report a problem. This is the bug. Now, this basically compiles all the information we need. It does not yet send it to us. So that's one of the things that people thought early on. Gosh, I'll just hit this button and that's all taken care of. Unfortunately not. We're working on that development team, but we're trying to get a certain amount of features out the door before that happens. It's just one of those hierarchy type things, and it happens to be front and center right now. But let's go back to the setting. Now, this is where you select your QC file format. You're probably not going to change this. If you're using a version of MyTech that offers the TRE, you'll select that. If you have the version that's offering the JSON, that is preferred. It's a little bit better. You're going to have a few less hiccups throughout that process. So if you are able to use the JSON, do that. If you're building with Alpine, Eagle, or Simpson, select those methods. And until you decide to change, which is a very rare occasion, you'll set it and forget it, really. Image source. Now, this is kind of cool. We're going to be using with an image upload because I'm not actually in a component manufacturing facility looking at a real truss. I'm going to use a photo of a truss. So that's what we're using now. Now, you can use the front camera, which every tablet is different on what is front and what is rear. We've allowed you to change that midway, but you've got your front camera and then you've got the camera on the other side. You can use both, either or, and you can even switch it to where you can use one for the underside and then the other on the top side, just the way you want to use it. So we're trying to be as easy as possible there to work with. So we can save and go back, we can reset it to the default. So let's jump into an inspection here. So I'm going to select a truss. And for demo purposes, I've got one all queued up here. I can verify, or I can change the job name if I want. And let's say, you're an egg builder and you're doing 200 of the same truss and you're going to QC multiples of the same exact truss. This allows you to be able to change that and say V2, V3 version number 1, whatever you want it to be. Also, because it is typically tablet-based, we've got the keyboard that pops up there. If you need that to go away, just hit that X there. Once you're okay, hit OK. It pulls up the truss. It gives you the diagram on what you should be looking at. Quick check, if it's not what the truss is you're expecting, you got to go back, get a different file, or look for the different truss. You've got the name of the file up here. You've got the truss name, the job that you just entered, the span, which is what is expecting it to be, the height, and then also the QC TPI 2014 version, and it's also a roof truss. So let's again go around the horn here, left to right at the bottom. Source, if you wanted to change that, like I said before, you can go front camera, rear camera, or leave it at the image upload. Notes. Now, this is one of the cool things that we added here recently, that you can add the notes. Right now, and this is probably till the end of the summer, this function does not upload to the server. So if you need to retain the notes long-term, I ask you that you save the report that we'll see at the end in a PDF. That way, if it is something that you repaired the truss or you made changes or you upgraded lumber, anything that you need to talk about, add notes to talk about this truss, it's here. Long-term, we're going to have the ability to upload it to the server, but it just isn't right now. And it's one of those development questions like, do we go back and work on the old, or do we focus on the new? And we're focusing on the new right now. So this is the notes function, and it's the same text box, if you will, throughout the inspection. We'll get into this as we get a little bit further down, and you should see this add notes downstream. So start an inspection, the green button here. I like this. Line, setup locations. This is totally up to your location of whatever it is. So F1 means something to A1, as does A2. Same with day and night shift crews. And they have got a number of crews here. I would suggest you manage this a little bit closer than what they have. Now, if you've got all of these folks manufacturing trusses, then good for you. But I'm guessing there might be some legacy people in there as well. Inspectors, Molly's default, but I'm going to click it to Jess because that's my name. The build date. Now, this is cool because let's say it was built yesterday and this is your first inspection of the day. You can go back and you can select yesterday or anywhere in the past. You can't select a future build date because that just doesn't make sense. But so that was one of the added functionalities that we did here recently. So from there, we're going to record the span and the height. So the design span and height is expected 31, 3, and 0, as well as 5, 11, and 14 for our height. Now, what was measured over here on the right? Now, again, remember, this is mostly going to be in a tablet environment. So let's say it was 31, 2, and 14. So you just hit this minus arrow twice, and it rotates down, to the feet below it, the inch below it, whatever you do. If you keep, it's like a wheel. It'll keep scrolling all the way down or all the way up. Same with the height. Now, let's say things got out of hand and it measured an even 6 foot. We click this twice to go up. So it's 6 foot tall, 31, 2 and 7/8 or 14 16ths on the span. That's what you measured. So you save that and you come back. All right. So we've already done that. We're going to save and go back. Then we're going to go to our lumber. Now, this is representative, and it's basically, verifying that what is there in the truss is what was specified. Obviously, if you can't see grade stamps, that's going to be in your own personal location as far as how you handle that. There are some verbiage and some things there that you get correct to where you're not grading lumber. We're not asking you to grade lumber. It is one of those things, though, that you want to verify that what is there represents what is on the truss design drawing. So you can go through and you can click these individually if they're A-OK, or to speed up, we can mark them all OK. And hopefully the trusses are built with the lumber that was specified. And that, again, is going to vary location by location and how good you are at doing that. Now, if there's upgraded, those are things that you can handle there. You can add the notes. You can note it here. Upgrade. Call the day. W1. So we're good there. Whatever you want to say there. Maybe you want to say hi to your manager or something there. So once you're happy with all of the lumber there, and you have to scroll down in many instances if there's multiple pieces there, save and go back. Now we're continuing to move left and right. Now we get into the joints, and this is where it starts to get fun. Now it gives you, again, the truss pops up. It allows you to click on each of the plates, and we're going to work on this heel joint on the left here. I double click there. Now we can do a visual inspection. It's going to ask you all the typical questions. The plate installed, is it free from any significant damage? Does the plate that's specified match what's actually there? If not, you would click in here to the installed plate. Now, manufacturer and type is typically, you want to match that. If the plate size varies, you can go ahead and do so there. That is one of the things that we've got in the works, or we're trying to talk with the development team to load your location-specific plate inventory, so you're not going through every Mytech, Eagle, Simpson, Alpine plate that is available. It's specified to exactly what's in your inventory. But that's one of the things that we're kind of working on in the background here. Member gaps. Are the member gaps 1/8 inch or less, or 16 inch or less on floor cord splices? The degree of rotation acceptable? Is the plate center position visually acceptable? Does it look like it should? And is the plate properly embedded less than 1/32? So that's visual inspection. Now let's do a critical joint inspection. All right, it takes less questions because we're going to answer some of those when we get into the next screen here. So again, installed, integrity, the plate type, the member gaps are okay. Assuming they are, we're going to continue. Now, this is where, if you were in your location, you wanted to take a photograph, this is the part where you take the photograph, either the front side of the plate or the back side. You'd use your rear camera, front camera, whatever it is. Because I'm not there, like I said before, I'm going to use a photo that I've already used. Now, what you want to do here is you want to get the plate between the blue square or rectangle and the yellow rectangle. So you kind of move it around. There's a few different ways of doing it. Because we're on tablets, typically, you can pinch it. There is a way with a mouse that I can do, but I'm not nearly as good for demo purposes. I won't put you through that if you're looking at the screen closely. So there, I've got the plate between the blue and the yellow, and I'm going to set the plate over here in the green on the right. Takes a minute because that's really doing a lot of things there for processing power. It identifies the perimeter of the plate as well as the tooth orientation. Now, let's say the slot layout was opposite of that because it was rotated. You can toggle that to whatever it looks like is the best. Then you can do that. Now, if you needed to, let's say you had it on an angle, you didn't take the photograph nearly as perfect as what this one is, you can select corners and you can use these bullseyes to draw in where the corners of the plate are. And what we're doing here is using some visual recognition software in the background to identify the location of the plate and the perimeter of it. You hit OK, comes up fairly similar. Again, you can toggle the slot layout. You could set the plate size if you figured out now that it's different, but we're happy with where we're at. So we're going to hit done. So now with this, we're going to line up the lumber with the red lines. And that is very similar to what the vellum paper is doing. Now we're just doing it on the tablet. So once you get where you're happy there, we're going to hit this light blue and lock the template. Now we're asking questions. Now this one right here is not as intuitive, but what it's asking is basically the gap between the plate and the lumber. Is it 0 inches? Is it flat all the way across? Is it a 30-second all the way across? Or does it vary? Or is it greater than a 30-second? I'm going to show you the gap. And basically when gap is selected, tap on a joint member to enter embedment measurement. So we're going to go on each one of them. So this one, let's say it's 0 on that top chord. Looks like we were pretty good on the slider there as well. And this bottom one, let's say it's a 30-second. So not all members are going to be the same. Obviously, lumber is not all the same. You could have 3 different mills represented just in that photo right there. Probably not, but it is possible, and they might plane them a little bit different. So that handles that with the embedment gap right there. And that is a measurement that the inspector needs to take while they're looking at it, or have that information to enter it in whenever they're doing this inspection. Now we're going to go into lumber. This is another cool aspect of it. Now we're going to look at teeth that are ineffective for lumber. And I'm just going to click on a few here instead of getting really into the nitty gritty, just to show you how it works. Now, each one of those clicks I made, I'm selecting both teeth. Now, let's say it's just one tooth. You can click on the same spot and it'll toggle through the top, bottom, left or right, or it'll toggle it off. So you can select however many teeth you want, and that's lumber. Now, think of this as kind of investing in the future. If you realize downstream that 90% of your ineffective teeth is because of lumber, you might think about upgrading your grades of lumber that you're using, or you might just be like, okay, that's what's going on. If it's the plate, which I'll talk to about now when I click on plate, and this picture does a good job here. I always talk about Thor and his hammer when he was putting this one in. A lot of damage here on the top and the bottom, which it's visibly recognized. I'm just clicking to show you, and we can click through that. So if you can separate out the lumber and the plate defects, you understand a better idea of what's going on. Now, is it too much hammering, or is it that the plates are rolling teeth? Is it going through the roller press? There's all kinds of different questions that you can ask and, try to work through there with, separating these defects out. So once you're done there and you've gone and established the gap, the lumber and the plate, as far as ineffective teeth, you hit analyze. Now, this is one of the things in our older previous MATLAB version took a little bit. It's going to seem like I sped this up. When I click analyze in 3, 2, 1, it gives you it that fast. Now, it records the ineffective teeth with the triangles and the squares. It shows you plate placement, the polygon there, and it shows you the center of the truss or center of the plate that was measured per the recognition versus where it was supposed to be. And most of all, it gives you this pass up here. So this joint passed, a lot of information on the left here, JSIs of 0.65. And that's one thing that this truss did not show. If you've got elevated JSIs that are critical in nature, there's a color-coded, warning system that takes you to red or the most critical, orange, and the like, to where what plates should be inspected. If you get there, this truss just didn't have one. It also gives you the center offset, which is important for, tolerances, understanding how close to center it is. That's how close it's measuring. Before, you probably wouldn't be measuring it to the 100th of an inch. Also, the rotation, it looked to be good. Again, the degrees, the embedment gaps, it records what you put in there. The ineffective teeth, it counts those based on the clicks. And it also gives you how many teeth are required and how many are available. So again, it uses the tooth count method. So you're kind of using both plate placement and the tooth count, which gives you the best of both worlds. And also is the plate placement within the polygon, center within a half an inch. So of course, we passed this one. It was nice to see that. We're going to save that. It puts us right back in case you needed to make any changes or do anything different in case you didn't pass. And it was a user error. You can correct it here, but we're happy there. So we're going to go back. Now here you can go through all of the other plates, do as many critical joints as you want. You can click and say, if you are unhappy with your visual inspection on any of the plates, you can answer those questions. Or if everything looks great because everybody builds great trusses, and especially your location, you can hit OK remaining on the front side. Now we still have the back side to do. And just one of those things that gets debated back and forth, a joint is front and back. It's not just one side. So that's one of the things that I like to remind people, just to make sure that they're doing things the way they should. We flipped that truss 180 degrees, or we actually mirrored it. So I'm going to do the same joint over here on the right. It's a critical joint. I'm going to hit continue, and I'm going to go a little bit quicker here just to save you guys some time. Line up our plate. And again, it's not perfect, but you know, and the way I lined it up is not perfect. It's between the yellow and the blue, and we're going to see how it does here when we set plate, because it looks like there's a little bit of rotation there based on how I did it, but it looks like it took it out of it. Now the plate slot layout looks a little bit off. I'm going to toggle that. That looks a lot better there. If I needed to, I could select the corners, but I'm really happy with how this is done. So I'm going to hit done. And then I'm going to lock the template. Actually, I'm going to move the lumber where it needs to be. Lock the template. I'll do a 32nd inch gap. And again, are you sure you want to do that? Because you're answering for all three of those pieces. I'm going to do so anyway. The lumber, again, click in here with whatever you see. And again, this is per the QC inspector. It's still the human element, and understanding that, you know, there's still some training necessary there to understand plate and lumber defects, everything that's going on there. Again, this one had a fairly low GSI, so I'd have to click a lot of teeth to that ineffective before I'd get it to fail. I've played with this truss and this joint quite a bit, so I understand that. So once I'm happy with wherever I'm at there, analyze. Again, it's quick. It passes, it's within the polygon, it shows the ineffective teeth, and it records that, it uploads it to our server to where you've got that for a long time. We've not determined record retention strategy on our side of it. Initial word from our leadership was forever. We'll see what the costs involved with that. That's going to be kind of a function of AWS or wherever we host this. Obviously, storage is cheaper now than it ever has been in the past. I just got a thumb drive that's 2 terabytes that is about the size of my pinky nail, which is absolutely stunning to me. So back to this, we're going to save that. We're going to go back to the original truss. If everything looks okay on the back side, we're going to set okay to the remaining back. Again, we're going to go back here. I started the inspection. I recorded the height of the span. I did the lumber. I did the joints. So I should be complete. I'm going to hit home, and it does give me the complete inspection. Now the span passed, the height passed within tolerances. And again, that's per the TPI-1, and we're allowing it to be adjusted on the server side to where if you wanted tighter tolerances than what is in TPI-1, you can input those. And in case TPI-1 changes, which it's one of the proposals that's out there that'll probably pass. So when that gets adopted, you'll need to tighten the tolerances or change them. We're able to kind of future-proof it that way to where it's an inter value as opposed to just being hard-coded there. Members passed, the height, the joints, everything. So we're going to save and go back. And with that, the inspection is complete. And what it did here on a side screen that you were not able to see is it produced this inspection report. Now, there's going to be 2 different versions of this. This is what happened locally that the tablet software created. It's going to include those notes that we referred to earlier. The version that gets uploaded to the server, and this is temporary, is not going to include those notes. So if the notes were important enough that you need to record them, I suggest you either print this out, keep it as a PDF, and you put it in your files. That way, if your QA inspector or anybody asks you downstream, you can refer back to those notes. Once, and then we're talking August or September, we get the new software on the server side complete, you won't have to worry about that. So it's temporary, but it gives you a number of pieces of information here. Job, truss, type, design, date. You can see it's from 2021. The inspection date, the inspector, the standard. This is the alphanumeric. I think it's hex key, if I remember right, on the unique inspection for that specific one, if we need to refer to it. The build date, the line, the shift, the crew. It gives you an image of the truss. It calls out all the plate sizes. It calls out the webs, both that is referred to for manufacturing purposes, as well as the unique webs. Gives you the length that was designed and measured. Gives you a check mark. The top chords, does the lumber match? Now, if any of these answered were no, it would have an X there that was red. The plate design information, everything looked okay. That's the input of the QC inspector, what they said. On the backside, similar thing. Now we get to the joints that we actually did critical inspections with. Joint number 2, fab tolerance of 20%. The JSI was 0.65, joint type H. The designed MyTech MT20 6x12, 90 degrees inside the polygon, 0.31 away from the center, which the tolerance was 0.5. The actual location was 3.659 inches. You did not get this doing it manually. And what happens is you can add these up over time and you can determine, are you always, 2.5, basically a quarter inch, sorry for the math there, away from the center on the X, or are you shifted? That way you can understand, okay, it's random or we're getting consistently, maybe we need to look at our process or equipment. Again, same for the backside. Gives you all the information for the teeth required, as far as what was measured, all the defects, a lot of information there. And it gives you the actual photograph of the plate that you took, which is another cool function of it. So with that, once you're complete there, again, we've got one inspection queued. You can upload it here, you can upload it here, or if you're to select another truss, it would ask you if you wanted to upload it. I'm just going to hit upload here. It does take a minute. That server-side code is slower than what we want it to be. That's one of the reasons why we're working to replace it. So that essentially is the tablet side of Digital QC. We'll probably be back in a future edition to go through the server side. Once we've got the new version going, it's fairly intuitive right now. There's, if you decide to sign up or if you'd like to know more information, you can certainly reach out to our staff and talk about it then at the server side, as well as any of the questions on the tablet side, everything that we've been doing for, the improvements, the enhancements, what we want to do. A lot of questions to be answered there. Let me go to my screen here, and if I can answer any questions. All right. Ashley was blowing it up. I think she's just thanking everybody. Chris Gould, thank you for coming for this. I think we had quite a few people looking at it overall between all the different platforms. And again, thank you for taking the time to learn about this. This is just one of the methods that we're using to try to get the word out about Digital QC. We will be set up at BCMC with a booth specific to this. You can talk to John, Dave, or Steven as far as answering any of those questions from our staff. We're doing weekly webinars, both on just Q&A of using the software, as well as this typical kind of advertisement of Digital QC, going through the purpose, the reason, what we've done so far. And that way we can help answer some questions there. So there's a whole bunch of different ways that you can get information on this. Also our website. If you'd like to sign up, you can also reach out to us any number of ways. That QC SBCA components is a really good option there, as well as any of our staff members. My email is jlos@SBCA components. And from that, I think we're pretty darn good here. And we'll come back here so you can see me. I was probably talking with my hands thinking you guys could see me the whole time, but you can just see my screen. So after that, I will sign off and look forward to hearing from you about Digital QC. This is a project we're really excited about, and all things quality control. So as I always say, peaks up and press on now more than ever. Goodbye.